Welcome to the first family affair of the NFL regular season, guys. Joe and Dionne celebrated a little too hard for opening night and couldn't make it. No, I'm just kidding. They had some technical difficulties with some weather this morning. So this edition of Family Affair today is just a Michaels takeover. Just me and Ralph Michaels, my dad, hanging out today. We have plenty of football to discuss. We got some free winners for you. But first, Dad, why don't you tell us about those other winners that scored those free wager bucks that we got to announce?
Absolutely, guys. We appreciate everyone watching, everyone retweeting. We did a couple random draws. Both winners were from YouTube comments from the Family Affairs show on the last week of August and on the 2nd. So if you go in, you check your comments, Marco S. and KJ Philly. All you got to do is throw in your Wager Talk ID number into the comment section. We'll reach out to you, and you'll get $100 in wager bucks, $25 for myself at Wager Talk, and $25 each for JM Sports, Joey D'Amico, and Dionne D'Amico. Again, thank you for watching. We appreciate the comments. We appreciate the retweets, and we'll keep working hard to provide you quality betting information.
Yeah, guys, that's even more the reason to go check out the shows. Like, follow, make sure you're subscribing. It's the only way to get notified of all the shows and to cash in on some extra benefits that you may see in the future too. But that's not the only deal we got going, guys. They do have a Pick Your Dream Team promo going on. You can get 2, 3, 4, or 5 of your favorite handicappers before Monday, September 12th at midnight. And you get 10% off that Dream Team lineup using code PYT10, like pick your team, PYT10 upon checkout, and you're getting 10% off that Dream Team lineup. But we're going to kick things off today with one of your biggest opportunities to cash in, and that's our Barking Dog money line parlay that we got going. Just because Joe and Dionne aren't here doesn't mean we didn't keep this alive this week. We do have 4 teams. We'll kick it off. The Dionne and Joe D'Amico's started off with the 2 NFL games you see listed over there. Joe had the Cleveland Browns for you at plus 102, and Dionne gave you the Arizona Cardinals plus 205. But Dad, why don't you tell us about your leg in this parlay? Floor is yours.
I'm going with a play that I actually use for my clients, Boston College plus the points. It's a situation where I feel more comfortable with them bouncing back off a loss than I do with Virginia Tech. And just a reminder to anyone new watching the segment, when we're giving best bets, that may be a 2 or a 3 unit play or whatever you feel comfortable betting. These parlays are going to pay 33 to 1, 50 to 1, sometimes 60 or 70 to 1. The most I would suggest playing these are 1 unit. So throughout the entire season, you have to be able to invest 20 units. You have to be able to be prepared to go 0-20. There's a possibility we don't win any, but we hit 1, you're up for the season. We hit multiples on the year, and you're going to have an absolute great football season. Boston College Plus is my segment of the Moneyline 4-team parlay.
Yeah, absolutely. This is one of those big risk, big reward ones. But we got to hit all 4, and that comes to my leg to end it off. And I'm going with Northern Illinois plus that 180. You talked about teams bouncing back off of those losses, and we already know Tulsa's a team that can be upset after last week. I mean, Northern Illinois didn't look the best against Eastern Illinois, but their rush offense that looked subpar for their standards still put up 5.5 yards per carry. They were 28-13 headed into the 4th quarter, and they gave up 2 touchdowns late to cut it close. But Tulsa rushed for just 1.91 yards per carry on 32 attempts, and while they had 460 passing yards, David Brin took 52 attempts to get there. We haven't quite seen Northern Illinois' breakout big play offense that we saw last year, but we know they're capable of it. We also know Tulsa's capable of letting it happen. So I like Northern Illinois to pull this upset against Tulsa, and Tulsa losing in an upset for the 2nd straight week at home this time. So that's going to be our 4 games for this money line parlay. Like we said, don't go bet the bankroll on this one, but we can win the bankroll on a couple big wins throughout the season. So We'll come back and we'll recap a couple of these games at the end. So for now, we're going to head over to our 4 round table games that we got for today. And I'm actually going to kick things off because I am excited for this one. USC is an 8-point favorite against Stanford with the total right now sitting at 67.5. This is meeting number 101 between these two teams. Last year was the 100th meeting, and USC now holds a 63-34-3 lead in the head-to-head series, but they've split the last 10. Posted a 4-6 record over those 10 games against the spread. But Stanford's actually walked away with 5 of the last 8, and they're 6-2 against the spread in those games, and they've dominated the first half, winning 4 of those 5 in the head-to-head series. So that's something to look at. And last year, Stanford dominated the game. They won 42-28 as a 17-point underdog in week 2. And although the score doesn't exactly show it, they were up 42-13 before 2 garbage time touchdowns by USC. And, you know, they both have a respectable history on their respective sites. David Shaw's 49-18 at home as the coach at Stanford, but last year they were just 1-4 against the spread as a home dog. And USC's new pieces looked impressive in their debut with Lincoln Riley, Caleb Williams, and Jordan Addison. Williams went 19 for 22 and led the team in rushing. Jordan Addison caught both of his touchdowns and got 54 yards on 5 catches, put up a couple more rushing touchdowns. And while Stanford got the win, I'm winning at USC in this game. Dad, I know this is an exciting one. We picked a couple of the exciting ones on the card for good reason. What are you looking at in the Pac-12 matchup this weekend?
Well, it's ABC prime time on the East Coast, obviously 5 o'clock Pacific for these two teams. But anytime you're playing a division rival early in the season, it shortens the odds. You know, the odds tend to be inflated over week 1. USC, yes, they look good. And, you know, yes, they have a great offense. And yes, Caleb Williams did that. And yes, they scored 66 points. But, you know, let's look, they only ran 58 plays. You know, this is a team that benefited from 3 pick sixes. Well, I don't think McKee is going to throw 3 pick sixes for Stanford. Obviously, they're a run-first team. To me, this total seems very high and very inflated because of the 107 combined points these two teams scored. You know, USC scored on every possession of the first 3 quarters. But when I look at this, you know, I did not get to the bank with the under. It is not part of my card because I'm concerned about the USC defense. Remember, this defense allowed over 400 yards per carry, over 4.6 yards per, over 409 yards per game, 4.6 yards per carry, and over 65% completions last year. They only have 3 returning starters, and the 280 yards they held Rice to, again, is nothing that I'm going to take to the bank. I did want to look at how teams do in game number 2 if they score 50 points or over and now playing a conference opponent in game 2. Well, they're just 38% over under. That's 38% to the over, 62% to the under. And when a total is under 70, like this game is, it has actually gone 7-15 over under since 2008. So I think we're going to get a closer battle. USC a little more conservative because they're playing a conference foe. Stanford with Shaw is still going to count on that rush game. Yeah, they threw the ball 30 times last week and only ran for 28, but that's because they wanted to try to expand the playbook against Colgate. They're going to go back in their shell, be a run-first team. We saw E.J. Smith rush for 118 yards. He broke off a long touchdown. That is Emmitt Smith's son. So they may have that running back that they count on in the past. I expect Stanford to try to run the ball. I am not convinced USC's defense can slow the run. They may slow them down when they get to the red zone, but not between the 20s. And I'm going to lean under in this game, 67.5. Again, USC's defense does concern me. I didn't get to the window with it, but clearly in this game, a clear lean on the under.
Yeah, I agree. That total caught my attention. And E.J. Smith did that on 11 carries, over 10 yards per carry. So, you know, that rush offense obviously has potential coming out of Stanford. So should be a good game to watch. But game number 2, headed out to another big one. Alabama, 20-point favorite against Texas with the total looking at 65.5. Dad, why don't you take the lead on this one? What are you looking at down here?
Well, we're talking the Crimson Tide. We're talking Nick Saban. We're talking about him early in the year. During the first 5 games of the season, since Nick Saban has taken over, you're playing your non-conference or you're playing your first conference opponent, depending on how the way the SEC schedule works out. He's 26-6, 81.2%. That's just blindly betting him. Okay, when you handicap for over a period of time, and Nick Saban's laying under 3 touchdowns, there's only one way I'm going to go. It's either with Nick Saban or I'm passing the game. So there's 2 ways I might go, with Nick Saban or passing the game. I am not going to fade Nick Saban laying under 3 touchdowns. Alabama's offense looked as good as it could. Alabama's defense looked incredible, and that was a vanilla defense. Now you have Alabama motivated. Well, how often does Alabama travel to face a non-conference foe? I just tweeted this out. Nick Saban's been there since 2007. The last time Alabama played a true non-conference road game was 2011 in Penn State. They're not used to going into a hostile environment. I think that actually helps them get motivated. Playing a neutral setting like they normally do in these NFL type stadiums to start the year against power foes, is one thing. Going to face Texas with 100,000 fans, facing an ex-coordinator and facing a team that's going to be coming to the SEC in a few years, I think this is truly a statement game. Ewers is a quarterback who was the number 1 quarterback out of his high school class, left high school early, went to Ohio State, redshirted a year, now transferred, and has become Texas's starting quarterback. But you have a young quarterback making his first start against a Power 5 opponent. And at ULM, what happened? He was sacked 3 times, and he was intercepted. I think he's going to struggle against Alabama's defense. I think Alabama's offense can take over, and I clearly lean the Crimson Tide in this one.
Yeah, you mentioned it. That was Sarkisian taking over as the head coach of Texas was something that caught my attention. Could it be a coincidence that this is the first time to the year in a century that Texas and Alabama have faced off in the regular season, and it's under the watch of ex-Bama OC and now Texas head coach Steve Sarkisian. So there have to be some emotions running through the teams in this one, and it should be an exciting matchup, but I can't find a way to argue. Alabama, it's so hard to bet against them. But they are just 1-7-1 against Texas, but they won the most recent meeting, happened back in 2009 when they met up in the national championship, and Alabama won the game 37-21. But, to your point, Saban may not play a whole lot of games on the road, true non-conference games on the road, but he's still got a 54-9 record on his tenure on the road with this Crimson Tide team. And they're on a 13-1 run versus non-conference Power 5 teams against the spread. So Texas is a home dog for just the 8th time since 2015, though. And they're 5-1-1 against the spread in those games. So, there's something to be said about Texas and being able to make up the distance and make up that ground as a home dog. They got a lot on their hands playing against the Heisman winning quarterback in Bryce Young. 55-0 shutout against Utah State. Granted, Utah State last week, he only put up 195 passing yards, but nearly 28% of Bryce Young's passes ended up for a touchdown. He threw 5 touchdowns on 18 completed passes, and he also led the team hitting triple digits at 100 rushing yards and scoring a touchdown there. But Jahmyr Gibbs put up 93 yards rushing too, so they have plenty of other weapons. You mentioned Quinn Ewers. He did have a halfway decent week last week, obviously. Threw for more yards than Bryce Young did at 225, but he did add an interception that Bryce Young was able to avoid. They have a backfield. Texas has an impressive team. They've made some changes, but like you said, it's hard to bet against Alabama. It's hard to bet against the Crimson Tide. So I'm back in Alabama as well on this one. And, guys, as far as college football goes, that's what we're looking at for now until we get over to that best bet segment. But, we wanted some excitement. We wanted some energy. I'll tell you, NFL, especially after last night's game, NFL is bringing the excitement and bringing the energy. And I'm excited to see what the week has to come. The weekend should be a good one. And, guys, I'm going to kick it off. I'm going to keep the mic in my hand while I got it. And we're going to look at our first game. The Chargers are taking on the Raiders. LA is a 3-point favorite at the moment with a 52-point line. And, I had a winner last night with Buffalo in the first big game, and we got the full weekend full of exciting matchups. And this one looks like two potential playoff teams coming out of the AFC West, two of the most powerful wide receiver duos that we see around the league right now, which has been created by that Devontae Adams signing in the offseason. But you look at, it's not just the Raiders in this game even that picked up some big names. They added Devontae Adams. They obviously got Chandler Jones as well on the defensive line. But the Chargers picked up two of the biggest names in the defensive market with J.C. Jackson and Khalil Mack. And, we saw what Von Miller did with his new team yesterday and how he was able to create that pressure and just make that entire defensive line better. And that's something that Vegas is really going to have to worry about and have to contain. And the improvements that they've made, I have questions if it's enough to, improve Derek Carr's record on the road. He's 16-25 and just 16-24 against the spread in those games. But, like I said, we saw it last night, what these changes can make. And I like what the Chargers have done. And I think that defensive line and that Vegas offensive line is something to watch. And I think Khalil Mack has a big game. And I'm leaning Chargers. I'm not quite confident enough to give it out as a play, but if I'm leaning Chargers. And I think this should be one of the best matchups. But, Dad, I know you're not living out that way anymore out west, but I know you're a Vegas fan for a little while. What are you looking in this matchup?
Oh, I'll be back in Vegas soon enough. So I still consider myself from Las Vegas now. It's, obviously you have revenge from the final regular season game last year. Remember, these two matched up and a playoff berth was basically on the line. Vegas wins that game 35-32. They were actually outgained by 94 yards. But what happened? They won the turnover battle, which in the NFL, like most times, if you're plus 2 turnovers or more, you are going to win that game. And sometimes you have to throw those stats out the window. Remember, if you're getting pick sixes, that takes away a possession where you can't gain yards. If you get a turnover on a short field, that means you are only have the possibility to gain 20, 30, or 40 yards, whatever you can. So you always have to look at, when you're looking at yardage, make sure you're looking at the number of possessions a team has because of their turnover margin at the end of the game. With that said, probably the best division in football. I mean, you look at these two teams, can both make the playoffs? Absolutely. You look at the Chiefs? Absolutely. You look at Denver, with Russell Wilson, it's a possibility they do. So that amplifies this game. That puts that much extra importance on a division game, especially when you're going to start it off. Last year, you look at the Chargers, they were number 9 at plus 30 yards per game. Las Vegas was right behind them, plus 13 at 27 yards per game. So 2 even teams that went down to the wire last year, and you have a 3.5-point home edge. So to me, that makes the line right where it should be. Let's look at how the Chargers did as a favorite. Last year, they were a home favorite 8 times. They went 4-4 against the spread, but they were a very disappointing 5-3 straight up. Losing 3 times as a favorite in the NFL is not a good look. On the flip side, of course, we have a new head coach now, but the Raiders with David Carr last year, as a dog, 7-4 straight up. When you can win 7 out of 11 times straight up, that's something to think about if you are going to take the Raiders when they're a dog, and if they cover, they win that game outright most of the time. So perhaps that's something you're going to be thinking in a money line play. I'm going to go under here. You still have Josh Jacobs. I know everyone's excited about the wide receiving core, and yet David Carr can sling the ball around. And yes, they threw the ball 682 times last year, but Jacobs still is the bell cow. averaged 4.2 yards per carry. Not great. I think the extra help on the offense will loosen up the defensive fronts in the beginning. And the Chargers still want Eckler to run the ball. You look at Justin Herbert and passed for 5,000 yards. So people expect him to sling it. Division games are different, especially early in the year. You got a lot of feeling out. You have a much more conservative thought. As I said, the importance to these division games early. Next week, what happens? The Chargers go to KC on Thursday. They have a short week for another division game. Very conservative here to start off the season. Both teams trying to get out with a win. I do like the under.
I like that. Yeah. Thursday. Wow. Starting it off with not the easiest of games, to say the least, against the Raiders. And then you head out to take on Patrick Mahomes on 4 days rest to start it. So that should be one to watch. No questions about it. But guys, last game on the round table card, sticking in the NFL. Tampa Bay and Tom Brady are 2.5-point favorites, it looks like, against those Dallas Cowboys. And the total's sitting at 50.5. Dad, what are you looking for in this one on Sunday?
Well, I mean, you look at the offense from Dallas last year. You look at the Tampa Bay scoring offense. How can you go anything but the over? Well, I'm going to go with the under. This is a new season. The Cowboys had much of their offensive success because they had 34 takeaways. That's the second most in the NFL in the last 4 years. When you get 34 takeaways in a season, you're going to score a lot of points. Tom Brady's not going to turn the ball over. You have offensive lineman issues on both teams. I am concerned about the Dallas Cowboys offensive line. I'm concerned about their wide receivers. I'm impressed with their defense. You look at Tampa Bay. They lost their center in the offseason. They lost their backup center and number 3 center in game 3 of the preseason. They're both working out still. We'll see who plays. Tom Brady missed a lot of practices. I'm not concerned that Tom Brady missed preseason games, but Tom Brady missed all the snaps in between those preseason games when he wasn't there. To me, there's value on the under here. I will absolutely, this has a chance of making my card. If I have it, I'm going to split it. I'm going to split it first half under and full game under, expecting them to get out to a slow start, trying to establish the run with offensive lines that are banged up. And if I do use it again, first half under and full game under, splitting your bet into 2 separate quantities.
I like it. We talk about the games. We know what games are coming up, but we don't really discuss our view on the game until we get out here and we do it live in front of all you guys. But I agree. I was looking at the total too, Dad. I can't argue in any sense. I was looking at it, and the wide receiver concern for Dallas stuck out to me. Amari Cooper's gone. So you're relying on CeeDee Lamb and Michael Gallup, who can be a pretty dynamic duo down the long run. But for tonight, or for this weekend's game, you're without Michael Gallup. He's been ruled out already. And Tampa Bay, the same thing. You're looking at that wide receiver core, and they had to be excited and ready to have Chris Godwin back and healthy, and completely healthy, I should say. Because it looks like him and Mike Evans are going to play, but they've both already found their way out into the injury report and are listed as questionable the last time I checked headed into this weekend's game. So the wide receivers, you've already got these injury concerns. You mentioned the offensive line concerns, so we don't have to get back into that. But I, again, love Dallas's defense. I mean, their linebacking core with Van Der Esch and Parsons is proven. If Trayvon Diggs can do anything even close to what he did last season, he's going to solidify his role as a number 1 cornerback. And their safeties, they have a brand new safety duo that they brought in this offseason, and Malik Hooker and Jayon Kearse. So they're at every level of the defense, they're improved and they're better. And I give them the defensive edge in this game. And while I give Tampa the offensive edge, I think their defense wins it by default on the other side, with Dallas off to a slow start. So I'm looking at that under 2. I'm looking more full game, I think. I don't think that I'm not going to risk it with Dallas starting the game. I don't disagree with it by any means. But as far as where I'm looking at the under in this game as well on that full game total. Yeah, like my dad said, maybe a surprise at 50.5 with these two offenses. But for game one, I don't think these offenses are at their full capability and full potential. So that not to be said about later down the season. But for game one, we're both looking at the under for this one. So, guys, that wraps up our 4 games that we have on the round table. But we got the last section, the section that everybody comes to see. We got those best bets. And just because Joe and Dionne couldn't join us today, that doesn't mean you aren't going to get 4 best bet winners on the show. Just because they had some technical difficulties doesn't mean the winners stop, doesn't mean they aren't working hard. So for this weekend, guys, sexy and savory Joe D'Amico, he's bringing you the Philadelphia Eagles -4. And Dionne, a game we talked about earlier, is taking those Las Vegas Raiders to upset and win and add another one to the list as an underdog, just like they did last year. But we got 2 of them for you from the 2 of us that we'll give you our breakdowns on. And Dad, why don't you get them started with your best bet for the action this weekend and what you may have going on over at Wager Talk?
All right, what the hell, son? I love you to death, but what the heck are you talking about? You call Joey D'Amico sexy and savory? If you're going to call one of them sexy and savory, then that's Dionne. Screw Joey D'Amico. He talks about himself a damn enough times. So don't know how much he paid you to say that crap, but I don't want to ever hear that again out of your mouth.
You must not have seen when I took over at Full Count. I stole that's his catchphrase to start it, so I became the sexy and savory. So it's been a running joke that every time I take over his duties, I take his nickname. So
all right, enough of that crap. Let's just never hear that again. I am going to a client play, and I am going to go East Carolina. You know, both teams off huge in-state rivalries. Old Dominion knocks off Big Brother Virginia Tech. East Carolina should have, could have, would have knocked off top 15 ranked NC State, miss an extra point, miss a field goal. But when I went to my database, 2 specific trends stand out for me. First, I wanted to make sure teams off a close home loss do not falter game 2. And it's just the opposite. When I went to the database, games 1 through 4, if you lost game 1 at home by 3 points or less, you have covered 68% in game 2. So that tells me teams that have that close loss do not fall down flat on their face. They tend to bounce back. 83 ATS wins, 39 ATS losses, 68%. Old Dominion actually got outgained by over 100 plus yards. When teams get outgained by 100 plus yards and they win the game, that likely means they won the turnover battle, had a big special teams performance. The next week, they tend to be overrated, and they're only 17 and 38 against the spread. That is 31% against the spread. So a solid 68% angle on East Carolina, a 31% play on Old Dominion, or a 69% fade against Old Dominion. I believe in this East Carolina team. I think they do bounce back, and I'm laying the 12.5. Remember last week here on the show, we gave you a best bet winner on James Madison, looking to make it 2-0 this week. East Carolina Pirates minus the 12.5. Jeff, finish us off with your best bet. And I think you squeaked out a half-point win on your best bet last week, didn't you?
I did. It was a nerve-wracking one, but hey, a win's a win. And, you know, as far as today goes, I'm looking at one that just barely got away from one of those upsets that you were talking about last week. I'm looking at North Carolina and Georgia State going over that 64.5 total. I mean, North Carolina's offense, we'll start there, has been one of the highest scoring offenses this season. And while most teams have played just one game, North Carolina is one of the teams that's given you 2 games. And, you know, they may not be the highest quality opponent. They played a decent, actually a pretty good Appalachian State team last week. Excuse me. But they gave you 2 instances that they put up a multitude of points. And in the game last week against Appalachian State, the total in that game was 55.5. Both teams individually went over that total, in that 63-61 win. Drake May hasn't thrown an interception yet this season. He's got 9 TD passes in 2 games, but their defense really hasn't done anything this season other than help that over. They've allowed they're 116th, in points per game allowed. They've allowed 42.5 points per game, and the average combined score in their 2 games have been 102 points combined. So they're putting up over 100 points in their games. They're blowing these totals out of the water, and they're 11-3 over the last 3 years after putting 475 yards or more in their previous game. And Georgia State's offense isn't exactly one to sleep on. This is their first time hosting a Power 5 school, so they're coming in excited. There has to be a high energy in this game, wanting to make a name for themselves on a big stage. And they have their offense has the ability to step up, and this North Carolina defense may be the defense to do it on. We all saw what happened in the fourth quarter last week. They gave up 40 points to Appalachian State, so we know they have the ability to give up the big play, to give up those points. And with the energy that Georgia State's got coming into this game, I think they could put up some points, and I don't see North Carolina's offense slowing down against this Georgia State defense. So as far as I'm concerned, I'm looking for North Carolina to go their 3rd straight game over the total, and Georgia State giving that little extra push to get it over that 64.5 for my best bet. But guys, that's what we got for you. I'm going to run back through just in case you didn't catch us at the beginning. You didn't see everything we had listed and offered. We're going to run back through. I'm just going to give you those money line parlay bets that we put together. We put it out there, and we put our money where our mouth was and put that best bet up for you. Joe D'Amico brought you the Cleveland Browns plus 102. Dionne brought you Arizona Cardinals plus 205. My dad had Boston College at plus 128. And I brought you Northern Illinois plus that 180. That $100 bet potential payout is $3,933.18. So like my dad mentioned earlier, no need to take a 5-unit, 4-unit play to the bank on that one. You're putting at max a 1-unit bet, and you're looking to just solidify that bankroll into the rest of the football season. So it's been excited, guys. Don't forget to check out those deals that we got going over at Sports Memo and Wager Talk. And don't forget, check out Tuesday, guys. We got some fun going on from the show coming at you on Tuesday. So make sure you check out the sites and potentially that $2 Tuesday offer that we got going on. And guys, just from the Michaels today, but it's been a pleasure. Thanks for joining us, guys. And we will see you next week.
We missed you, D'Amico. See you next Friday.